Tomas Vigil reflects his New Mexican roots.
I've always had to pick up a pencil, a pen, a crayon, a spray can, and express myself. When I was exposed to graffiti at a young age, I felt like that was a pure art form. There was something about creating for the sake of creating.
Can you tell me about that snippet of origin story for you as an artist?
I've always forced myself to work with acrylics and oils and paintbrushes and canvas because that's what I was taught. I eventually realized that it was the canvas, it was the frames, it was everything that was kind of standing in the way. So I said if I was going to continue to do artwork, I was going to do it my way. It's when I was trying to conform to how everybody else was doing things that I was failing, that I wasn't ever whole. And now that I'm breaking the rules and doing it my own way, painting on what I want to paint with my own medium, is where I'm really succeeding.
How do your mixed media pieces of art tell a story?
More than anything, I've worked on street signs, I've worked on license plates, I've worked on old scrap pieces of metal, old barnwood. Some things can be found around the neighborhood. At one point, I asked the New Mexico Department of Transportation if they had any old signs, and they actually donated quite a bit to me. The found objects themselves, they're not necessarily just an old piece of rusty trash. It's something that this once was somebody's license plate that they had on their vehicle. Mm-hmm. God knows how far it's traveled, how long it's sat in somebody's shed and then got forgotten and thrown in the dump and somebody else picked it up and collected it. Mm-hmm. I feel like every found object has a story all on its own. To place historical figures on those things brings those stories to life. The Bible itself is the oldest story ever told. And I feel like I'm combining the story I'm trying to tell with historical stories and bringing it all together at the same time and trying to convey something that evokes one's emotions.
That transition, why the icons?
I have always been drawn to religious imagery, and I grew up in the church and I followed the church. I found myself more so, rather than listening to the lecture, looking at all the artwork on the walls and all the sculptures and these big murals and altars, and I found that more interesting than the actual lecture. And it's always stuck with me. Obviously, you hear all these stories growing up from the Bible and from saints, and it affects you, and it makes you become a better person. At the same time, these images were speaking to me. When I was painting them, I realized that they spoke to other people as well. And the images themselves continue to hold a story.
Can you share an example with us, one of your favorite stories that you've told through your art?
I've always been drawn to Our Lady of Sorrows. For some reason, that image has just always spoke to me. And even though I didn't know the story when I was a young kid, asking the questions and learning that it was about Mary's seven sorrows, about the day that Jesus had died. And I wanted to tell the same story. And the Virgin Mary itself is something that you'll see in my artwork over and over again. I've painted her 100 different ways. But the Lady of Sorrows has a sacred heart sitting in front of her with 7 swords in it. And each sword has its own story and reason for her pain.
Why does this story speak to you?
There's something about what she had to endure as a mother and what Jesus went through for everybody, for humanity. And people forget that he gave his life so that we could be forgiven for our sins. And she, as a mother, I feel like any mother that has to see her child go through that was affected by it. And La Pieta and Our Lady of Sorrows is just a testimony to that. The imagery that people have painted of her and her pain has always been something that's affected me. It's something that conveys emotion. And what other way than do it in a fresh and new way that speaks to the younger generation?
Tomas, how do you feel about reinventing tradition through your art?
I feel that it's a necessity. I feel that people forget where we came from and are easily, with everything that's happening in the modern world, all the tragedies with cell phones, with the Kardashians, with all this stuff, our minds are overloaded with a need for the next thing. And we're forgetting about our roots. We're forgetting about where we came from and our morals and values. They're disappearing. So I feel that it's very important to keep those traditions alive, those traditions that are fading away. We really need to continue to keep true to our values. And by creating things with this iconography and the symbolism, I'm hoping to keep these things alive. And I don't really care what religion you are, but I feel like to have religion or to have some kind of greater sense of good, it's a good thing. We should all be concerned about treating each other the right way.